Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. Welcome to the third session, which is titled as Positive Psychology and Introduction. In the second section, we discussed about the nature of positive psychology and how it can be studied in integration with the yoga and mindfulness related methods, how it is integrated in this course and why it is important to study both of these in a course on self-management and career management. Today's session is primarily focused to give an introduction to the field of positive psychology and also pointing out how it is applied in the different streams like management, R&D or tourism management, and what are the recent advances in the field of positive psychology. If you recall, in our previous discussion, we looked at how after World War II, psychology and psychological research was mostly focused on the illness and disorders. It was the demand at the time as when it was started, because the major mandate for psychology was to work with the other health professionals and help people and war veterans to get rehabilitated psychologically. So, attain a ordinary state of consciousness, attain a normal way of life was the objective of the field of psychology. But then there was a recognition that there is a lot in life other than being normal. There are many great qualities which makes us true human beings, and that was the call to look at not only how to attain the normal state of life, but it is about researching and knowing more about optimal functioning or flourishing of the human being, and that resulted into the major advances in the field of positive psychology. What do I mean by optimal experiences? We would like to look at these things through certain stories. So, imagine the day when you left home to pursue higher education, or you left home for a major camp or an development program. Both your parents were skeptical in sending you outside, far away from home. They were constantly in dilemma, thinking if they are making the right decision, whether their son or daughter will study well and live up to the standards of the parents' expectations. When your parents are amidst doubts and dilemmas, exactly in that moment you take charge of situation. You sit beside your parent, you pacify them, give them hope that you will not do anything that hampers your study or degrades the reputation of your family. Rather, you will strive to bring pride and honor to the family. You also assure them that irrespective of your busy schedule, you will call them once a day to update about your well-being as well as ensure that they are doing well too. Can you relate this story with your life or the life of the people, your sibling, your friends around you? And please look at the highlighted word hope. In the difficult time in the time of indecision, in the time of dilemma, it is the hope which has brought light to the hearts of your parents and to yourself. Let us look at another story, and different people will have different characters and different situations coming to their mind, coming to their memory when reading about this incidents or this provocation. So, think about a teacher or teachers, neighbors or friends or relatives who spend time and effort to make you learn new things, who helped you to imbibe some good qualities, or even made extra effort for your personal or professional growth. Think about those. I requested in the last session that please keep pen and pencil in front of you and please keep writing about it. Think about the characters, think about the people, reflect from the childhood, your school days, your higher secondary school days, your college days, the days in your professional life, and think about those people who have spent time and effort to make you a better person or make you a better professional or make you a better student. Write their names, write the place where you met them, recall some of the most memorable incidences of your interaction with them. Try to see that as it happened at that time. While doing that, what is the emotion coming to your mind? This emotion, we all know, is the feeling of being grateful. So, in everyday life, there are such instances that allow us to identify and apply positive psychology interventions, and that make our life flourish and worth living. Another experiment you can try, you can pause this lecture, look at the person closest to you at this moment, think about a good quality of that person, think about his or her special skill, his or her special quality, his or her special positive attitude. Think about it, note it down, read it, and if you think so, you can edit it, rephrase it, make it appropriate based on your understanding. And why not just call this person, go to this person and say that so and so, I am taking this course on yoga and positive psychology, and as a part of the assignment I wish to appreciate you of your this particular quality. If you are a teacher, you can carry out this exercise in the classroom. You can ask people to appreciate each other, give the appreciation, first write down the appreciation about the person sitting beside him or her, and then give these slips and exchange these slips. And please notice how it feels like, how it changes our energy levels, how these interactions bring warmth in the relationships, even maybe for few moments. So, we can see that we all are using positive psychology intervention in day to day life. In this course, we will try to understand the science and art behind it, and also using these things more consciously and more strongly. So, in order to understand it even better, how the shift in the psychology took place, we can take two another incidences. At this stage, it is important to distinguish how the field or branch of knowledge which focuses on well-being is bound to be different from or bound to look at different variables which are looked at in a field which is focused on treating mental illness. So, we are trying to understand this process again by two caselets. The first caselet is of Rahul, a fictitious character, but not very difficult to find a character like Rahul around all of us. So, Rahul is 40-year-old technology strategist. He is a BTech graduate with management degree from a renowned institution. He handles a team of 15 associates. Year on year basis, the team manages to reach the targets, but Rahul hardly takes leave or goes for vacation, nor he grants leave to his team members. He also skips lunch, rather he prefers to utilize his break in checking emails and replying to the clients. Sometimes his colleagues see him with his forehead pasted on his palms, grappling his head as if thoughts are weighing him down. His team interaction is also not very pleasant and often limited to delegation of tasks and activities. Naturally, he is known as the grouch manager on the floor. Rahul is unaware of the situation. Rahul's immediate manager is able to see the stress on his face for many years, and in one appraisal he finally decides to send him on a forced paid leave for 2 weeks. Rahul makes up his mind, takes the clinical help in which he is diagnosed with acute stress, anxiety and some signs of depression. The doctor gives a verdict stating at the moment Rahul is unfit to continue with his day to day chores and put him on a psychotropic drugs for. Naturally, Rahul is unaware of the situation, but Rahul's immediate manager is able to see the stress on his face, and for many years this is obvious to him. In one of the appraisal, manager finally decides to send him on the forced leave for 2 weeks. Rahul makes up his mind and takes also clinical help in which he is diagnosed with acute stress and anxiety. So, what do we infer from the Rahul's story? We can infer that Rahul is performing in an autopilot mode. Obviously, he is stressed out. Rahul's colleague, most likely they are not happy working with him. Rahul's mental and physical health both are at stake, and we can also infer that mental and physical health are deeply connected. Unfortunately, we can also infer that Rahul is unaware of the severity of the situation. If this continues for a long time, he can face emergency alert at any time, because the stress and anxiety can become more severe, and long term stress and anxiety may result into more serious ailment like hypertension, heart diseases, indigestion and many others. So, we can also infer that Rahul needs immediate attention, and in this immediate attention we most likely the counselor or the health professional or a coach who helps Rahul to see the situation and get out of it most likely will start the conversation about what is not pleasant, what is not welcoming, what is pathological in his dispositions and how it is being perceived by others. This story is of another fictitious character, Savita. Savita is 50-year-old senior marketing manager. She heads a team of 10 marketing associates who have global clientele. Savita has no fixed working hours, and sometimes we see her working even on public holidays. Every month Savita and her team is given fresh targets to achieve. We also know that she has a family comprising of husband, 2 children. So far the leadership meeting we had, we always notice Savita's cheerful face. In fact, on the floor she is known as woman who is always smiling. Among her team members, she is known as an emphatic leader who always lends quality time and patient ear. On probing further, we came to know that last month the team could not adhere to their targets, but still in meeting Kavita looked so confident and resilient of the failure. We remember how she owned a failure and emphasized upon the areas of improvement rather than brooding upon the failure or playing the blame game. We found little curious about her ever cheerful attitude and hence dwelled deeper into her lifestyle. We found that every morning Savita sets aside a time for herself which she calls me time. It lasts for an hour in which she purely works upon her psychological and physical well-being. She engages in meditation, yoga, journaling, reflection. She also prepares food which mostly constitute of raw green vegetables and fruits. She has been doing this for many years now. We are really amazed to have Savita in our organization whose presence inspires and motivates all of us. So, looking at this caselet, you can understand this is the account given by one of the senior colleagues of Savita. What you can infer about Savita and what you can infer from this story about well-being? We can infer that Savita is mindful in whatever she does. She radiates positive energy. Savita's colleague feel happy being around her and working with her, and Savita takes care of her overall well-being. Positive psychology focuses on such characteristics and helps people to inculcate these and enhance these characteristics. For many years, we had enough knowledge, we have substantial knowledge about stress, anxiety, depression, but we did not have much knowledge about positive attitude, about courage, about well-being, about friendliness, about love, about following a discipline. We did not have much idea, and positive psychology looks at these variables. So, essentially it looks at what makes our life worth living. It is going beyond what makes our life difficult. And as we looked at in the previous session, it is not only about studying what makes our life worth living, but also look at how to improve and nurture and flourish our present lives. So, it looks at interventions, it looks at the applicable practical programs and steps to actually realize these values and create these positive experiences in our day-to-day life. What constitutes positive psychology? If we try to understand in terms of the variables, this is a mind map of so many variables which can be studied, which are studied in positive psychology. You can see how one variable leads to more number of variables and a tree of the positive psychology field emerges. So, if you look at it, it studies emotions, it studies eudaimonic approaches, it studies applied positive psychology, it looks at psychology of time, it looks at strength and virtues, and all these things are further result into many more variables, life experiences. There are a variety of positive emotions, humor is one of them, transcendence, justice, courage, temperance, positive coping, coping with choice, positive aging, positive business, positive education, positive therapy, positive coaching, all these are the fields which are emerging in the field of positive psychology. So, you can see that there are some of the fundamental states, emotions which are studied in the positive psychology, and their reflection is further studied in education, management, and it can be studied in many fields. I can give only one example how the core ideas of positive psychology are applied or can be applied and can be studied and are relevant in the other fields of studies. So, we can take this example by work of Serawada and colleagues. They have very recently published a systematic literature review on tourism management perspective, and they looked at how many positive psychological characteristics and how positive psychological variables can be studied in the tourism management. So, triggers for tourist well-being, those variables are about happiness, positive emotions, savoring, character strengths, gratitude, humor, mindfulness, engagement, relationships, meaning, accomplishment. These can be looked at as the antecedent of well-being. These antecedents may lead to positive episodes, which are related to social intervention, which are related to social environment, natural environment and built environment, tourist experience, and we can also look at how different countries vary in with respect to some of these things. Positive aging through social support, belongingness to social world, how these things are affected in the tourism context through the antecedent of well-being and well-being itself, and that naturally has consequences, and consequences naturally will be studied in those aspects which are relevant in that particular field. So, if we look at the example of tourism management, for them the consequences is revisiting intention, person should be willing to come back to that place again, positive word of mouth, person talks about it in a positive way with others, positive attitude towards poverty alleviation and developmental issue is also studied in the tourism management, and that can be the outcome of the well-being and the positive episodes. Residents' participation in value co-creation with tourists. You remember we in the very first session we discussed about how our economic activities and business organizations have moved beyond selling goods, commodities or services to create experience and create opportunity for transformation of the experience in collaboration with the customers. And similar thing can be studied in the context of tourism management, and that is what is written, residents' participation in value co-creation with the tourist. This can also be resulted by positive episodes which are the result of the antecedent, which are the result of some of the aspects of well-being. There can be multiple theories which are studied first in the positive psychology. They are still applicable in many of these situations. So, broaden and build theory, PERMA model, mindfulness theories or flow theory, all these can be applied in the tourism management. So, this is just one example how positive psychology in terms of its variables, episode and consequences can be studied in a field, in a particular field. At this moment, I would like you to reflect and take another reflection exercise. You can pause this lecture and take your pen and pad and think about what is your profession. You may be in teaching, you might be in the IT industry, you might be in the banking, you might be student of engineering, you might be student of social sciences and so on and so forth. Just pay attention to your professional context or your academic context, and in that context I would like you and I invite you to reflect on, first start writing the desirable outcomes, desirable states, desirable situations in your professional or academic context. For example, if you are in the project management team, the desirable consequences or desirable outcome in the project management team will be timely completion of the project, positive interaction in the team, proactive problem solving and many others. Similarly, if you are a R&D professional, you can look at innovative experiment taken place, amount of collaborative projects, the number of creative ideas being generated in a meeting, or looking at the high impact project and collaboration of the various specialization in the field. So, you can look at these consequences. If you are a banker, you can think about what is the customer satisfaction level consequences or business level consequences, so on and so forth. So, whichever profession you are and whichever academic program you are, you can think about what is the expected consequences, expected outcome in your field. Then think episodes, what positive episodes may result into those consequences. So, for example, regular meetings or timely face to face meetings can be a good positive episodes for creative ideation in an R&D team, or pleasant customer interaction and proactive problem solving, helping customer to choose the appropriate product, financial product in the example of banking industry, that can be a good, important, desirable episode for a banker, and that will naturally result into consequences, the expected consequences, business related consequences or positive word of mouth consequences, or customer satisfaction is also one of the consequences. So, you write down the episodes. So, first write down the positive expectations or positive outcome, expected consequences, expected outcome in your field. Then look at what might be the episodes which can help you to create those consequences, and then think about what might be the positive psychological variables which can result to those episodes. So, while explaining this model, I started from the positive psychology variables, then move to episodes and then consequences. But when you are doing this exercise for your own context, I advise you to start with consequences, because that is most obvious to you, that is most immediate concern of yours, and then you can think about what episodes are important to be created to create these consequences, and then what psychological mechanism might be governing those episodes or triggering those episodes. And fourth question comes about what theories, which are the theories can explain this whole sequence. So, that is how we can apply these ideas of positive psychology in the specific professional or academic context. Before we discuss further and nuances of the positive psychology, it is warranted to distinguish the two very common terms used in the general conversations about positive psychology and conversations about well-being. These two terms are hedonic and eudaimonic happiness. These terms were given by Aristotle, very popular categories. Hedonism in the general parlance is understood to be pleasure seeking, a life occupied by the search of pleasure. So, there is an inherent subjective satisfaction involved in the pleasure, and this is mostly about avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. Another aspect of happiness is eudaimonia. Aristotle explains, and it is understood in general parlance as happiness that arises from good work. It is more objectivist in nature, means it is relevant at the social level, people can objectively look at the eudaimonia. It is about the objective way of looking happiness, and this is the function of virtues. Eudaimonia and hedonism are the two types of lives or two directions of pursuits of happiness, and implicitly and sometime explicitly it is understood that eudaimonia is preferable over hedonism. This distinction is now being questioned, and Cassidan and Biswas Diner and Laura King, they have written extensively about it. There is a special issue and there is a response to the response of their articles as well. What it summarizes is that there is a good evidence that eudaimonic and hedonic aspect of well-being actually can operate in tandem. So, there is no hard and sharp categorization of the two aspects of happiness. It can be understood by few examples, and these examples are given by these authors. Flow, intrinsic motivation, self-esteem, belongingness, feeling of competency, all these experiences are replete with the personal joy. They are replete with the sense of pleasure. They are replete with urge for people to keep looking at that, and people look at these things as the matter of self satisfaction, not societal welfare. Societal welfare for the flow or for the intrinsic motivation is more like an outcome rather than the main objective of pursuit. So, in this situation we can't distinguish hedonism and eudaimonia. Secondly, eudaimonic pursuit sometimes related to negative feelings as well. They might be result of the negative feelings as well. You take up the social responsibility, you do not get the expected outcome or expected response, you may feel dejected, then still some people go through this experience and still continue with that. There is not much happiness per se, but there is a pursuance of these objectives, these pursuits, and that happens along with the negative feelings. So, eudaimonic pursuits may not necessarily result into happiness. So, we call eudaimonia as happiness, but there might not be many signs of virtues which are associated strongly with eudaimonia. But and there is another objection, another situation which can explain why there cannot be a person who is purely looking at hedonism. So, as there is no guaranteed happiness and eudaimonia, hedonism is also not something which people will always pursue, and that can be understood with the thought experiment suggested by Robert Nozick, that this is the famous thought experiment where he asked people to imagine you are in a machine which gives you perpetual joy, experience of joy continuously for the whole life. If you just be in that machine, just sit there or attach that on your head, this will give you perpetual joy. Can even with that machine people would like to spend their lifetime? Answer is no. Nobody would like to have that kind of machine which can instigate some brain cells, some neurons in the head which can give the sense of perpetual joy, and people would actually like to live and engage in the real life, in the hustle bustle of the real life, struggle of that real life, and then seek pleasure. So, nobody is purely pursuing the hedonistic objectives. Eudaimonia may not necessarily result into happiness, may not be reflected into happiness, and in many situations eudaimonia and hedonism are difficult to distinguish. So, we are also not following this classification in this course. At this stage, it is also important to articulate what positive psychology is not. So, it is not just absence of negative. Rather, in time of adversities and challenges in life, which we may sometimes term as negative, positive psychology as a discipline leads to self development. So, it is not only about goody things, it is as much about the pleasant experience as it is about adversities and challenges in life. It is not just the branch of medicine concerned with illness or health. In the famous paper American Psychologist 2001, Seligman and Csikszentmihalyi explain that because of certain developments right after World War II, psychology became subservient or subfield of the health management and healthcare departments. So, their natural objective was to treat the illness, but now things have moved a great deal, and positive psychology is not only about health and illness, it is about work, about education, about insights, about love, personal growth, sports, play and all walks of life. Positive psychology does not rely on wishful thinking. It is neither based on faith or self deception, fads or hand waving. It is a scientific process, it is a scientific field. It tries to adapt what is best in the scientific method to understand the unique problem that human behavior presents to those who wish to understand it in all its complexities. Positive psychology aims to expand, not replace psychology's understanding of human behavior. So, these are some of the caveats which were important to be articulated at this stage. Based on these caveats, what we are seeing is emergence of the second wave of positive psychology, and that second wave is riding on the recognition of the dialectics of the positive negative of the human psyche. This is explained by Lumas and colleague in large number of papers. We can summarize this aspect in the three principles: principle of appraisal, principle of covalence and principle of complementarity. Principle of appraisal is about difficulty of categorizing phenomena as either positive or negative. Is optimism always positive and pessimism always negative? It is a questionable thing. So, this principle is about that. Principle of covalence is about those experiences which involve blend of so called positive and so called negative experiences. This is explained by Lumas through post traumatic growth and love. These two examples explain the principles of covalence. Based on these two principles, they arrive at the third principle, that is principle of complementarity. That says that flourishing depends on a complex balance and harmonizing of the light and dark side of life. Let us look at these principles in more detail. So, principle of appraisal, this can be understood by so many examples. We will look at these 4 or 5 examples. Optimism and pessimism. So, optimism is good, it is good for well-being for the normal population, as well it is good for the serious patients of the different diseases. Medicine works probably more strongly in the people who are having the optimistic attitude about their cure, but it is not that pessimism is always negative and always pathological. We can take example of NASA's endless simulation of the bad news scenario. About any project, there is a very active, sincere thinking about what may go wrong, and based on that large number of simulations are played. So, pessimism over here is resulting into positive outcome of this in terms of the success of the project. It is contributing to the success of the project. Whereas, many a time optimism may play as detrimental, and there is a study being quoted in this paper which says that in the game of gambling, more optimistic people actually lose more money, they suffer more. There are large number of studies suggesting that self-esteem is very important for personal growth, it is positively related with the well-being. But it is also found, and in one of the Seligman's work itself it is reported, that inflated self-esteem, that because of the teachers and the parents extra effort to build the self-esteem, child or people can develop inflated self-esteem, and when these people come across, when the reality of the world hits them, they are more likely to go into depression. So, high self-esteem, which otherwise in general is considered to be good for well-being, was found to be not good in many such cases. Similarly, humility, which is considered to be opposite of self-esteem, was found to be very useful, more functional, resulting into long term well-being in many studies. Third example is freedom and restriction. A very straightforward simplistic understanding will say freedom is good and restrictions are bad. But if we look at the health literature, if we look at the sports people, if we look at the scholarly academic pursuits, we can quickly understand that freedom can be detrimental, and if we consider routines, the tough routines, rigid pattern as opposite to freedom, they are actually good for academic excellence. They are very important part of the training of any athlete. There are another study, there are other sets of study about freedom and restriction in the field of marketing. In marketing, they have found that when customers are presented larger number of choices, their subsequent satisfaction is likely to be lower, because there is a sense of I might have missed out something. So, actually more freedom result into lesser satisfaction, and that probably result into more consumerism and more rush towards. In all the ancient cultures, there is a recognition and appreciation for following the restraint. Brahmacharya is very important part of yoga. A parigraha, not hoarding more than what you require, is part of the personal growth. So, freedom and restriction might be positive in the specific context. Third example, our next example is forgiveness and anger. Large number of studies are suggesting that forgiveness is very important for attaining well-being and retaining well-being, and anger is generally understood to be a detrimental feeling. It is and there are large number of books written about anger management, but they are not always positive or negative. Excessive forgiveness can be negative, and being angry can sometimes be very useful. Famous statement of Aristotle is there, which goes like a right amount of anger at the right situation with the right people for the right time is a wise thing. Anger is also understood, anger can also be understood as moral emotion, particularly when it is directed towards others. When we see some injustice happening to someone else, if we do not feel angry, we may not feel urged to act against it. Many of such situations are studied in the context of married life as well. So, in the same paper you can look at the reference of McNulty and McNulty's work with many other colleagues. They have followed interesting research design to understand what extent these so called positive emotions are useful and actually contribute to well-being. So, they studied these variables in the context of married life and they tracked the married couples, newly married couples. They tracked some of the couples, looked at and got the assessment done about their well-being, satisfaction with life, etc. for 3-4 years, and they have found that optimism, self-esteem, freedom, forgiveness may not be helpful in the long run in particular type of relationships. What are those type of relationships? In the, for example, abusive relationships, or when one partner has a tendency to show anger and being abusive. When this problem is mild, optimism may work, forgiveness may work, but when a partner has issue in terms of his or her anger or being abusive, more seriously, in the long run actually optimism works negatively for the life satisfaction. Forgiveness actually works negatively in the long run with a partner who has excessive tendencies, serious tendency of being abusive or being angry. Actually, in the being restrictive, being tough, being more upfront about these negatives of the partner is good, and it prevents the long term problems in the married life. So, McNulty's work is very interesting to understand the dialectical nature of the positive negative well-being, and it invites us to look at all these things in the particular context. In a particular situation, certain things can be positive and negative, and we need to understand these things in the right context. Another example in the principle of appraisal is about showing happiness in sadness. Because of overemphasis on importance of being happy, importance of being positive, people might be feeling, and some people actually feel burdened to look positive and look happy, which eventually contribute to sadness. Sometimes it is important to express sadness, to get things resolved, to give the signal to your loved ones, to give signal to the system to respond to. So, the positive negative is not so straightforward, and we need to understand in the right context, and we are going to delve deeper what it means to manage ourselves and manage our career. Then there is a principle of covalence, which says that many experiences actually involve blend of positive and negative experiences. And one example is post traumatic growth. After trauma, which is actually a intensely negative experience, large number of people result into more personal growth. They become more responsible, they become more sensitive, many times they become better problem solver. Their sincerity, their commitment for a positive cause, all that is found to have increased after the trauma. Similarly, love is understood in its many shades. In the Indian tradition, we call it Shringar Ras, and we looked at Shringar not only not only a pleasant experience, not only the union of the union of the lovers, if it is romantic love, it is also the separation of the lovers which gives Shringar, which is called Viyog Shringar. So, Sanyog, which is union, and Viyog, which is separation, both are part of the love. And to experience love fully, experience of both the aspects are important. So, there is also no distinction between positive and negative emotion. Based on the principle of appraisal and principle of covalence, we can say that flourishing depend on complex balance, and it is somewhere experienced in harmonizing of the light and dark side of life. So, positive psychology is not just about positive. Positive psychology is about harmonizing all shades of life. So, recognition to these factors has resulted into the second wave of positive psychology. It talks about accepting and confronting reality of life with courage, and life has both negative and positive. Life has both celebration and suffering. Sustainable well-being can be achieved by appreciating and embracing both of these. That is the recognition of the second wave of positive psychology. Next thing is recognizing that everything in life comes in polarities, and importance of achieving an adaptive balance through dialectics. In the second wave of positive psychology, there is a greater recognition that learning can be drawn from indigenous psychologies. Indian tradition, Maori traditions, many traditions in Africa, and many other traditions across the world have great insights about managing self and managing life. Those insights needs to be distilled, can be presented and examined with the scientific methods, and they are the great reservoirs of the insights which can enrich the positive psychology. This recognition is also there in the second wave of positive psychology. So, in nutshell, it is about 5 aspects. Number 1, it helps us to accept and makes peace with past. That is for sure. How to move on from the trauma, this science can help us to know more about it and to practice that. It helps us to look at life with optimism. Life as such is an opportunity for growth. That fact is non-disputable, and that is established in the positive psychology. It allows us to appreciate present. It makes us to appreciate, hold on to what is good in life. There are many methods like gratitude, appreciative inquiry. They are the result of positive psychology movement, and they are very effective to make us appreciate the present. It helps us to look beyond momentary pleasure and pains of life. It helps us to move beyond pains. It has strengthened our knowledge that there is a possibility of growth, there is a possibility of flourishing which can pass through the paths of pain and anxieties and insecurities and vulnerabilities. It also helps us to recognize that behind the apparent pleasure there is a greater reality, and pleasure is not the ultimate thing in life. It helps us to be grateful, and it helps us to be forgiving, because without being grateful we cannot experience many other positive emotions. We cannot appreciate life, we cannot appreciate relationships, and without forgiving we cannot move on in our life. And that is where positive psychology can be of great help. The meaning of positive is not absence of negative. Rather, it refers to things that we value in life, such as joy, peace, perseverance, courage, forgiveness, gratitude, and Indian culture has the words like harsh, santi, dhairya, kshamashilata, kritagyata. One must understand these things doesn't come automatically by fighting anxiety, sadness, hatred, jealousy and other negative emotions. They have to be inculcated in itself, in its own right, and that is where the greatness of Buddha comes. He was the great master who emphatically told that as you have learned hatred, anger and anxieties, you can learn compassion and friendliness. In life, it is difficult to separate positive and negative aspects. Emotions occur concurrently, and even traumatic event in life can lead to great personal development. This statement is not there to discount positive psychology, because this recognition result into only strengthening the field of positive psychology, where it can not only look at positive experiences, but can also look at the traumatic experiences as opportunity for personal growth resulting into flourishing. In terms of adversities and challenges, positive emotions have to be identified, have to be cultivated and nurtured, and that is where again the role of positive psychology comes. Positive psychology teach us to aim for things we want and move away with acceptance of things we do not want. It gives us clarity about the life purpose. It gives us clarity about the experiences we are seeking. It gives us clarity about how and what kind of life we wish to live. It completes the field of psychology. It completes the reflection about life and about career. And it is not only about individual, it is about individual experience and characteristics, and about which we all are talking since last are talking in this lecture. It is also about positive institutions and communities. Context is extremely important. Positivity emerges in a social context. We can create social context, we can create social reality which provoke positivity, which inspire positivity in individual human beings. So, it is about experiences, characteristic, and also about the institutions and communities.